All right, guys, welcome. I'm going to ask Zuber a bunch of questions that I had on my mind. One of them was when I was looking at the Fred data, it says that as of May 2026, our savings rate is 3%. This is the Federal Reserve's personal savings rate. Historical average since 1959 is roughly 8.4%. So it seems like people are not saving a lot of money right now, which is really concerning. Is there a reason? Is there reasons? Is it the cost of living right now, or are people sheltering money somewhere else? I don't know.
So first off, you are right to be concerned, right? The Fred data around savings rates goes back decades, so this is not a new report. The fact that the long-term historical average is over 8% and we're more than half below that, just ticking down to 3% in the latest report, should be shocking and horrifying, right? But I do think, as you've kind of hinted at, there's multiple layers to this cake. The first layer, obviously, is affordability is terrible. But I also think you know, there's a lot more FOMO going on. There's a lot more, right? There's a lot of people that, for example, that are not saving to buy a home, right? They believe the narrative that they should rent forever, and thus they're not saving, $400 a month or whatever they would do decades ago, because eventually they want to buy a home, right? If buying a home is not on your horizon, there's no reason to save money for it. So some of it is just change in behavior, it's belief. I think it's horrible belief, but you're asking for what's happening. That's the reason. So again, affordability, change in behavior is certainly a part of it. I do think there are alternative investments. For example, the younger generation will still put money into crypto or Bitcoin, which is not part of the savings rate, right? It's a different asset class. That was probably more common a couple of years ago when Bitcoin was racing. Bitcoin's down 50%, although it's been strong the last couple of weeks. But yeah, I think there is some alternative investing going on. But if I were to prioritize them, I would say affordability. Like if we were going to do a pie chart, and the pie chart's 100%, I would say affordability is responsible for 50 to 60% of that, right? The K-shaped economy is real. You and I have been talking about for a long time. For 80% of us, it's just hard to save. So let's call it 60%. I would call 30%, or maybe 25% of the remaining, so, we're almost complete now, is just a change in behavior. I do think there are significant number of millennials, Gen Z, who just don't believe in buying a home. Thus, unlike baby boomers and Gen X, when we were saving to buy a home, that was just being tucked away. So the remaining, I don't know what that is, 10% or so, is just a change in behavior, different asset class. So you are rightly concerned.
I want to ask you this question too. A lot
Sure.
of people say, you hear like, well, Grant Cardone's been all over media right now because apparently he's, this class action lawsuit and he's showing clips, and I think it's kind of interesting to watch it.
Sure.
But Grant Cardone doesn't think owning a owner-occupied house is a good investment, and I completely disagree. I think if you look at people that own a house, like if you did one thing and you owned a house over a long period of time, versus not owning a house, like people that own houses their net worth is greatly, I forgot the ratio, right? Like, I don't know how people think it's not a good investment. Can you tell me why it's not a good investment, or it is a good investment?
I can tell you the story. So, I think there's the math and the logic, and then there's reality, right? I think Grant Cardone and frankly Graham Stephan both say don't buy a home, rent. And they both want you to take the delta, because let's be clear, owning a home today is more expensive than renting. So both Graham and Grant and plenty of other people will say take that delta and put it into assets that cash flow, right? Because Rich Dad Poor Dad told us all those decades ago that your house is not an asset. It's a liability because it consumes money. So there is that line of thinking that for a lot of people, like when you just do straight math, you should choose the cheaper option for shelter and then invest the delta. Okay, now let's get to reality. Most people are horrible with money. If you gave somebody an extra $400, most people won't invest it. They will spend it. Most people will benefit from owning a home because they suck at savings. So the fact that you have a mortgage and it's fixed for 30 years and it's, it's protected against inflation, is actually a massive contributor to wealth. For most people, they should absolutely own a home because they are not financially disciplined enough to do what Grant and Graham say to do. For most people, buying a home is their largest asset they will ever own. And it is nothing more than a forced savings account. They are chunking away little bits of money every month that in 30 years, when they get close to retirement, they will own free and clear. And bingo, bango, it's an asset they can lean in retirement. So both things can be true. Grant and Graham can be correct, but I would argue if we just step into the world of reality, most people should own a home because they suck at money.
Okay, I like that. I also think that you're not taking into account like strategic things you could do. I mean, not you, I'm just pointing this out. To me, I'm like, I can go get 97.5% FHA financing to buy this property, whether it's a single family or duplex. I can get a 203K loan and do a renovation and increase the value. I can live in there 2 years or 3 years. I can then sell that and take that tax-free $250,000 or $500,000 if you're married.
It's funny you brought that up. I know a couple. I think we traveled with them 10 or 12 years ago. That's all they ever did. Every 2 years, they bought a fixer-up property, moved into it. It's got to be hell living through a remodel. I mean, I'm sure it's not fun. But they would buy the ugliest property in the nicest area, live there for 2 years, sell it, and use that tax loophole. $500,000 tax-free every 2 years. And they would do it time and time again.
It, to me, that is one of the best investment strategies there is.
Absolutely.
Like, because you're leveraging the best financing possible. You're leveraging the tax code, and you could strategically, like, people think of all these complicated ways to invest. It's like, look, you can just be very strategic. You buy a house, you fix it up, you live in there for a few years, you buy it at a good price, you know that it's worth more.
Yep.
You're not really constrained to market fluctuations because you could ride it out because you need a place to live anyways. And yeah, you could take that big chunk. Like strategically, you can do that. And now with ADUs as well, I think that's a huge thing. I'm seeing people in San Diego with the new laws, and then I watch Thatch. Thatch is always preaching ADUs, and I agree.
It's funny. I just talked to Thatch an hour ago. One of his students, Thomas, he said his name was, just sold an ADU in San Jose, California. He built it for $250, sold it for $560. So the first transaction just got reported in the San Jose paper like 2 weeks ago. So now you can actually condoize and actually sell the ADU and pocket big money.
I know that's pretty cool. So the next question I had was, I started looking into like Parkinson's laws, right? And this is why I think most people never build wealth. And I see it with the people I work with, is they start making more money, but their lifestyle goes up, right? And we always talk about this on the show, is like, what advice for people today that are watching this when this gets posted, like if you were to like coach somebody and they came to you and said, look, Zuber, I make $180,000 a year on my W-2. Like, what is the first step you're going to tell them? Like, because they're not right now, they're not financially disciplined. Like, hey, when you get a check-in, do this. What are the first steps you would tell somebody to start getting on course to become able to save up for an investment property, or to save up an equity injection to invest in a business? Let's say they don't have that right now.
Yep. Yeah. So it's funny you bring this up because I'm building my presentation for Bigger Pockets right now. And this is actually an activity I'm going to give the room. So I'll give it to you now. If you find yourself in a tough financial position where you're living check to check, which is a lot of us, it's probably 80% of the world, right? The first thing I would ask you to do is frankly what Olivia and I did. And that is, pull out 30, I would recommend 90 days of expenses and just figure out what your life costs, because most of you don't know. I mean, I've asked this question to hundreds of people, and most people underestimate. For example, they might say their life cost $4,800, but then they go do this exercise and it costs $7,000. So the first thing you have to do is figure out what your life actually costs. That's the first activity. And I want cold, hard receipts. I want every dollar. And if you want to average it over 3 months, that's probably the best. 30 days minimum, 3 months is the best. And then if you really want to get nutty with it and you want to do what Olivia and I did, you need to sit down, you and your significant other. You have to do this together. You may do it separately and then come together, but you have to do this. I want you to go through those 90 days and I want you to write down an N or a W. What does that mean? An N means a need. You need food, you need gas, you need shelter. And a W is a want. I want a new shirt. I want a new phone. I want a clean car, whatever. So what you'll quickly find out is your $7,000, which you thought was $4,800, is full of wants. And until you're an adult and you take complete ownership of your life, you're not going to win. You're just going to inflate your lifestyle. So you need to figure out what your life costs, step one. You need to figure out what percent of that is needs versus wants. And then if you want to get jiggy with it and do what we did, you start cutting out wants. We did not do a want for almost a decade. Almost a decade. We did all our needs. Needs were covered. Our daughter got some of her wants, but not all of them. And that's how we were able to save money because we were living check to check. We spent every penny that came into our account. We were there. I know what that's like. It takes focus and discipline. So those are your two-step activity.
Because now you have the cash flow from your rental properties. Like when you have all this excess cash that comes in that you're not using, where do you funnel money other than real estate? In your opinion, would be a strategy to diversify and also like what are your thoughts there?
So again, I can only tell you our story. So we have plenty of reserves and we got little pockets of money here and there. What Olivia and I do now is we just do crazy trips. We're about experiences now, right? We've won the game. We're enjoying life. You know, if you watch this channel, you know that we just spent 3 weeks in Australia, a week in Canada, and then did a cruise all in the span of like 6 weeks. So we're enjoying our life at this point, right? Once we've got the savings put away. And the only reason we could do that is because, we built a life that produces 40 and we live on 12. So that's a lot of extras. That's a lot of go have fun and all of that, which I wish for all of you.
So you probably spend 6 figures a year now on travel.
Oh, at least. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, and that's fun. And you're not even, when you build the life of purpose, financial life of purpose, right? You're able to do that. And so you're able to do stuff that most people will never be able to do. They're lucky if they can take one trip a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
To, for a week, right?
Yep.
To maybe not like a nice 5-star resort type of thing. This year will be over before you know it.
Yeah. We're already halfway through. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I know it goes quick. What do you see as this year comes to an end? What do you see as opportunity?
We unfortunately have one big, I don't know what you would call it. This economy is going to go one of two directions, I think, and it's not close. We do have this unfortunate war that should have never started that is going on, and I don't see a clean way out. If they start blowing up oil infrastructure and desalination plants and boots on the ground and all these horrific things, we could see a pretty significant worldwide recession because whether we like it or not, the world still runs on energy. Now, the U.S. will be insulated from this because we are a net producer. So in our oil refineries and oil producers, they'll be printing money. But oil is a worldwide commodity. And, if Japan's willing to spend $200 a gallon, we're going to ship it there. So we will feel higher gas prices. But yeah, worldwide recession could be out there. I'm also in the belief that this AI build out is going to lead to a .com-ish collapse at some point. Don't know when. This month, next year, a decade from now, no idea. So we do have some nuttiness going on. But at the end of the day, I think people, individuals, households, they need to take care of themselves, right? Don't worry about, I love the economy. It's my game. It's my form of entertainment. But most of you should just take care of your household. Figure out what your life costs, right? And execute the wealth formula. My wealth formula hasn't changed. The wealth formula is not even mine. It's hundreds of years old. Create disposable income. Live on less or make more or do both. Become an elite investor at something. Dude, I don't care what it is. Is it 93703 single family homes? Is it vintage ice hockey cards? Is it classic Mustangs? Is it Harley Davids? I don't care what it is, but become elite. An elite means you can identify value faster than anybody else. And then you got to do it for a decade. That's it. It takes a decade to build true wealth. I am not here to get rich quick. I'm not here promising wealth tomorrow. I'm promising if you're going to live with sacrifice and work and commitment for a decade, your chances of being wealthy in a decade are really, really good. That's what you do.
What, if anything, do you know about? I was speaking with a banker yesterday and told me to learn about Austrian economics. I'm curious if you have any knowledge, or you may or may not.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another form of economics where the supply side, demand side, easy money, hard money, hard currency. It's just another way of kind of trying to slice things up. He's probably talking about Austrian economics because they think that Kevin Warsh is going to follow that, because before him it was Keynesian. Again, these are all just economic terms that most people aren't going to think about. Jerome Powell, Bernanke, Yellen, they were all Keynesian economists. And there is a belief, although I don't know that it's guaranteed, but there's a belief that Kevin Warsh will be more Austrian, which means more hard dollar versus print your way out.
Very good. Well, guys, I know I usually do the talking, not the questions, but if you'd like to talk to me about business ownership, you can simply go to onerentalmeeting.com. I bought that URL specifically for you that's watching this now, to take you through and figure out, is business ownership the right fit for you right now, whether it's a gateway business like vending, or is it getting into a home service type of business. I do think it is a great time. The numbers are showing that more and more people are choosing entrepreneurship over the W-2 world.
Yep.
And onerentalmeeting.com. It's as simple as that.
I think your one rental edit, or your one rental meeting is perhaps the best thing I do each week, because again, it's about options. And I have long said, and I have receipts, that I think AI will produce more businesses than less, but we may have a timing issue. So again, if you have that aptitude, that energy, that, to reach out to Bo, take a test, figure out what you're good at, onerentalmeeting.com doesn't cost you anything. Just 15 minutes of your time. Talk to him. He's a great guy. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.